Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 46th episode of Let's Talk Inclusion. My name is Manobina Chakraborty, the host of this talk show. And today we will discuss about multisensory learning. I have with me today Meera Raghu, dyslexia therapist, ESL teacher, and inclusion expert who has worked internationally. Meera is joining us today from Toronto, Canada. Good morning, Meera.
Good morning, and it's good
It's
evening for you guys.
nice evening here in India. Welcome to Let's Talk Inclusion, Meera.
Thank you so much for inviting me in.
So, before we formally begin our discussion, could you please tell our viewers a little more about your life and work, Meera?
I've been a teacher for about 20 years, nearly 20 years now. I started as a mainstream teacher. In fact, I started my working career as a journalist in Bombay, in Sunday Observer, and kind of moved on to teaching because of motherhood. So, yeah, that's where I'm at. And then I accidentally entered the field of teaching and special education and kind of found a passion for it. And I've read, researched, and I keep learning as I go along. And every day is a learning journey.
That's amazing. Thank you, Meera. It's kind of a similar story. Journalism to accidental teaching, then passionate, being a passionate teacher,
Yeah.
and an educator, special education, love for special education and everything. It's a similar story. And yeah, it's me. Okay. So, Meera, as my experience goes, multisensory learning is all about encouraging learners to use more than one of their senses when taking in new information. And this approach promotes using activities that appeal to our visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and tactile senses. Right?
Uh, Also, olfactory and gustatory, which is the taste and smell.
Yes, yes, very much so.
Essentially, that. But
Okay,
I mean, this is the main things that is focused on, and there are other things that are related to it. So, I
okay,
mean, but yeah, essentially these five.
okay. And this is a particularly popular teaching method for children who have learning differences. And it's also
Uh,
a great way to ensure that your teaching is inclusive, isn't it?
that's, yes, it is definitely recommended for children who have learning differences of any kind. But I
Mhm.
think overall, everybody, including the non or so called the mainstream students, would also benefit from it because everybody is different. I mean,
Yeah.
everybody cannot understand or follow or retain everything that's taught in one particular way. Like, you may be a strong listener,
True.
you may be a strong visual person. And so when you combine the methods, it works very well.
Yeah, very much so. So, being an expert on the subject, could you please tell us why should all senses be engaged while teaching or maybe learning?
See, before I go on to talk about why should all senses be engaged, say, I would say that it's very difficult for any instruction or any teacher to include all the senses that are there. But ideally, what we should be focusing on in a classroom, and especially in a mainstream classroom, is that we use two or more senses at every point of time. So that, and we give the students the opportunity to use more than one sense. Like, they're not only listening to a lecture, or they're not only writing, or they're not only, seeing a picture. But if we can at least incorporate all three or maybe four of these senses at the same time, then we are at least reaching out to some of the strengths of the student.
That's really important
Yeah.
information. Does this work? Yeah, it of course works with students with the different learning needs. And how does it work with, or how is it beneficial for everybody in a mainstream classroom? Could you please tell us?
Okay, let's look at it this way. In a mainstream classroom, if we have about, say, let me say, on an average, you would have around 25 to 30 students at least in a classroom.
Yeah, more than
I mean,
that in
that's a
India.
minimum. I think it could be more, but at least most schools would have a minimum of 25 to 30 students. Now, out of these 25 to 30 students, without any diagnosis or without anything, we can take it for a fact that there will be a few students who find it difficult to read and follow the instructions, read the instructions that's being probably used in a PowerPoint or being written down on the board or any of those things. Now, if they are going to be only reading that because either because they are not very good at reading and comprehending or because they don't have the attention span to focus for a longer time. So when at the same time you're also speaking the same things, they're also listening. So there are two senses already being involved. Thirdly, if you're going to, as simple as that, if you're going to make them write it or draw it, or there is visuals in your presentation, all of that is going to catch their attention and retain them. And when they're actually involved in maybe doing a role play or acting out or speaking out, you are involving the fourth sense of tactile and kinesthetic.
Okay, okay.
So
Yeah.
it makes sure that the students are engaged and involved in a variety of ways, and this helps them to kind of stay focused
Mhm.
and hopefully retain some of the concepts being taught.
Very true. And you just said it very rightly that, and I always keep emphasizing on this, that it's important for all of us to remember that learning difficulties and learning differences can often be undiagnosed until adulthood, right? So
Very often.
incorporating multisensory learning into the teaching of all students ensures that any child with an undetected learning difference will still experience this help.
Yeah, but here is a point where I'd actually like to come back and talk about it. We did, when I did say, I said that there are basically the five or the six senses that we normally know about. But in fact, here's where I would like if you can share the screen. And I want to
Yeah,
question before we share the screen,
sure.
how many senses do you think we have? I mean, how many senses do we need to process learning? How many different ways is learning processed?
Yes, see, as you said that at least two or more we should use while um, processing something, processing information and learning. So you said that. Otherwise, as I said first, as I said, we can use five senses, and you also added two more to it, right?
Yeah.
And you
Uh, but actually,
specified
there are
up
12
to two or
senses.
more we should use while
We
learning.
should use two or more, but actually, there are 12 different ways or multisensory ways of learning. In fact, I'd
Okay,
like to actually, if you can share the screen and show
sure.
the PPT, the next one, please. This is actually talking about the 12 ways of learning or processing information. So it is like, obviously you have the visual, the auditory, the tactile, kinesthetic. But beyond that, we have the sequential, which means an order of putting things. Then you have the simultaneous, reflective, logical, verbal, interactive, direct experience, indirect experience, and rhythmic or melodic. And in fact, rhythmic melodic is very often used in the lower classes when you're teaching them, let's say, the hand washing song or any of those things which you
Yeah.
include a music or a poem to it. That's automatically. But what happens very often is we do not use this in older classes. As soon
Mhm.
as they leave year two or grade two or grade three, we think they're grown up and now it should be all very formal, which unfortunately is not true. It can be used for even up to college level or even in subjects like science or history or social sciences or any subject.
Yeah. So do you incorporate multiple intelligence theory while planning lessons?
Yes, that's a part of it. So one of the things is that yes, you incorporate the multiple intelligence theory and the learner profile as to the learning styles.
Okay.
All of
Okay.
that should be a part of your understanding the student process. And when it's automatically included in your lesson planning, when you look at every lesson plan before you plan it, if you try, see again, I will say it's not possible to include all 12 of these in every single lesson.
Mhm.
But if we are at least including about four or five different varieties or mediums, then it works better.
Yeah, so we have started getting comments on Facebook. It becomes really helpful to engage multiple senses for learning.
That's true.
She must be a teacher. Yeah. Yes. So, and how do you make lesson plans?
Um, in fact, before we go on to how to make lesson plans, if you can move on to the next slide.
Sure.
You asked me a question, and I would actually like to talk about it. Why should all senses be engaged? One is, yes, like I said, it makes sure that everybody, all children are involved. It's the simplest thing. And every student learns differently, and so they require different stimuli. But the most important thing that happens is the cognitive development of a student, at irrespective of the age, happens much better when you're engaging all their different senses. For example, they hear the information that the teacher is giving in a lecture format, maybe, and they connect it to another sense, and they can conceptualize and maybe form an image of what's happening. And so instead of just watching and listening, then let's use a very different parts of the brains are involved. Like, we all know about neurons and the connections that are made and all of that. So when different parts of the brain are involved, it provides the learner, the person who's listening or the student, with more than one way to make connection and understand the concept, and thereby hopefully retain the knowledge. For instance, if there is an activity which is involving auditory, tactile, and visual, children will be able to build a relationship between the sound that they're hearing, the words that they're hearing, and actually maybe touch and feel. Like, if it's, especially if it's early phonics or phonics, and they're able to formulate the letter, they're going to trace the letter. So they're listening and they're also speaking about it. So there is multiple ways involved, and this helps them build a connection, and it kind of cements the concept for them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much for your input. Would you like me to go to the next slide?
Yes, sure.
Yeah, or actually, I also want to add here that the understanding for it's for our viewers, Meera, that understanding why multisensory learning is one of the most effective student engagement strategies. It's important to understand how our minds work, right?
Right.
The human brain has evolved to learn and grow in a multisensory environment. Let me just remove it. This, yeah, I just can't see you. I couldn't see you with this, and that's why. So, kind of, according to this whole brain learning theory, all brain functions are interconnected for this reason. And we remember how to do things best when the directions we are given engage multiple senses, right? So
Yes.
most educators, as you said correctly, add audio, and I have also seen educators generally add audio or visual multimedia into their assignments. But multisensory learning can also include, as you said, touch, smell, and taste-related materials.
Plus also action, like, say, if I'm going to be learning, let's say, history, if I'm
Yeah.
actually going to role play and act out a scene from whatever history it is. So it kind of brings alive the whole thing, and retention is better in those stages when you do those things.
Exactly. So as long as the activity engages multiple areas of the brain, it can help students develop stronger memories of how to do it.
Yes.
Uh, so, would you would like to add something to it as like why it is one of the best ways to
See, one of
practice?
the other things is, I mean, which is something all teachers take into consideration when this is happening, children are having fun.
Yeah, that is very important. Yes.
And when
Yeah.
they are having fun, obviously they remain engaged and involved. And those two are important factors in a school day for a child, where he's got about 6 or 7 hours of learning, not continuously, but to a large extent, a lot of it is, like, structured. So to keep him engaged for that entire duration of the day and ensure that every subject receives the same amount of involvement, engagement, and interest. It's important that they are actively engaged in not just listening at all the times or not just writing, but engaged in variety of ways.
It is it difficult for teachers to implement this in lesson plans?
Not really, which is, but yeah, it has to be incorporated in lesson plans. It cannot happen, but it's not. It's actually a lot of things we do it automatically, and a little bit of forethought and a little bit of having an idea of what are the different activities can help. And more than just the teachers, like see, teachers do the instruction part, but even the receptive knowledge part of it, where the student is showing you how they have understood, that can also be multisensorial, and that also makes a difference. If that can, you can give them variety of opportunities of way they represent their learning.
So, what suggestion do you have? Can you
Yeah, so
just
in fact, for
example?
this, I would love to actually go back to the slide and read through the 12 different ways that we have.
Okay,
Uh,
which one?
let's proceed. I mean, okay, here are the 12 different ways of processing information. And for each
Mhm.
of these ways, what I would like to do is actually talk about what are the strategies that a teacher can incorporate. Let's say visual teaching, which is basically where if they can see a diagram, images, webs, flowchart, or an image of, let's say you're talking about a volcano. If you have a picture of a volcano or a video of a volcano, all of that will kind of make it more alive. So that is visual. So they're only seeing, but still it is a more alive visual instead of just words. Or the auditory, which is something is done when automatically. So they are listening, so that's using their sense of hearing. So two simple things which most of us do automatically when we are teaching, right? So let's move on to the next one. And I will talk what I'll do now is talk through all the 12 ways, and then and for each of these I'll give you some ideas, and then we'll come back and talk about how it can be incorporated as a whole. So tactile teaching, where they're actually touching things. So even simple act of writing or tracing letters or writing out instructions or doing that diagram and drawing is tactile because their activity, it's involving their pencil actions. Then you have dioramas or making charts with all of those are involving tactile. Kinesthetic is role playing. We try and incorporate that a lot. Participating in field trips, going out and actually experiencing something is
Mhm.
another way of kinesthetic because it involves. And the experiments that you do in a science lab or a social science study or geography, all of that is kinesthetic. So there is movement involved. So even for a simple thing like maybe you're teaching grammar, you can actually incorporate kinesthetic. You can
How?
make, let's say, parts of speech, for instance. If you are
Mhm.
doing teaching student the parts of in a sentence, the different things that are there. Like, there is a verb, there is a noun, there is an adjective. Now you can actually place these and have people moving as noun, like you are a noun, you are a verb, you are an adjective, and
Okay.
deciding where you are in the sentence.
Yeah, that's a good idea. That's a really good idea.
So the sentence structure can be kind of crystallized for them, and they're actually moving as life. So they know, oh, adjective needs to come before this, a verb needs to come after that. That kind of a concept kind of gets cemented. Sequential, this is especially useful when you are doing science history of to what happens after what next, or even when you're doing story sequencing. So placing it on a timeline kind of helps and gives them an image again, and they know. Some of the students are automatically very logical and they work in a certain way, after this, then this. So that kind of, again, sequential teaching. So teaching them how to actually do that and making
Could you
that
please give me some example, like from any subject?
it's the easiest. Sequential learning or teaching actually is easiest in stories.
Hmm.
After this, like the hero. the main person, the main character has done this, and because he did this, this happened, and because that happened, then the next thing happened. So that's automatically happening. Or in a science experiment, when you are going to be doing stages of the experiment. So when you first let's say boil the water, if you want teaching them steam, so you take water, it is at this form, and then you put it in the fridge or make it cold, it becomes ice, and it can be melted. When you heat it, then the thing that's coming out of it is steam. So when you boil water, steam comes out, so that's the next stage. So if that can be presented in a flowchart manner.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Or
Yes.
timeline history, like
Yeah.
it's the
Timeline
easiest
is
thing.
a good
Yeah.
option. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. And simultaneously, like again, here there is example, you can produce summaries. So comprehension, you're enforcing comprehension, you're enforcing that the main idea of whatever you're teaching or whatever is the concept you're doing teaching has kind of, so note taking simultaneously, especially for senior classes. If you're teaching a whole concept, how do you take the main points out of it, the crucial points, the key points, and make summaries out of that? So it kind of solidifies and condenses the whole learning for you.
Yeah, it works for the students with learning differences as well. I
It
tried it
works for
myself.
everybody, it works for mainstream
Works for
as well.
everybody. Yeah.
Or creating a
Mm.
concept map for thing, and especially in concept maps, when you're creating mind maps or concept maps, if you're able to use color coding, if you're able to use images in the middle of it, so all of
Mhm.
that kind of makes it easier to remember the information that you're learning and revise, and it's easier for retention.
True.
And
Very
rather
true.
than the teacher doing this, if you teach the student to do this and they are actually making that a part of their study skills, it it's better for them, because if they do it themselves.
Very true. Yeah.
um, this is more useful for math and physics and those kind of subject based numeracy based subjects. But it can, so you're basically using reasoning, but it's also useful in English when you're doing inference, to understand why of something happened. Then for obviously for lab work, writing opportunities, when you have to do creative writing, when you have to write a essay, for instance, and you have to think about it. So all of that is something which is you have to solve a problem. So there is a problem and there is a solution. How do you arrive at that solution? What is the process to get to that?
Yeah. There are some comments. Some
There's a
students.
question somebody asked.
Yeah. Some students do not remember or
Yes,
relate in
yes,
proper
you can
sequence.
definitely use different colors, which is what I said. You use color coding actually helps. Using color coding and using arrows as you go, so to show the sequence, it definitely helps. And using colors is a big advantage for some students, but for some students, it can be distracting. So you have to decide based on the student,
Very true.
or you have
Yeah.
to let the student decide based on his own. Oh, does this distract me a lot? Or is it okay? It helps me more.
Yeah. Yes. The next one is
Can you move to the next slide?
sure.
Yeah, verbal instruction. So this is again, instead of verbal instruction does not necessarily always mean the teacher giving the verbal instruction or giving lecture. It can actually be putting them into small groups, peer-to-peer teaching, or discussions where you put them in small groups and they talk about it, they discuss it, and they kind of arrive at their own solution. And this helps in two ways. One, they are able to learn at their level. So grouping, if it is done effectively, I mean, I'll talk about it again in the last slide when I talk about strategies. But if the grouping is done effectively, and if the same level or same ability level of students are seated together to form a group, then the discussion is at their level. So they kind of are able to dig more into the topic that you're talking about, and make form their own understanding with. And when a peer or a same age person explains a concept, it's actually much more easier for them to understand, using the whatever terminology they use rather than a teacher talking about it.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. And in interactive teaching, I can see.
There is group debates, small group activities where they create maybe a model in a small group. Let's say if you're learning about dams, for example, you're learning what's a dam, and you put them into a small group and they actually build a dam and they see what can go right with it and what can go wrong with it. Like, if I don't build the foundation strong, then it'll go to fall, or, something like that, making it very top heavy. So they kind of start understanding, oh, we shouldn't be doing this. They will learn through mistakes. They'll probably have something go wrong, but it's a way of learning. And they learn to start questioning their own thinking, which
Yes,
is
yes.
essential for moving on to actually crystal concept, understanding the concept clearly.
Yeah.
This is something not a lot of it is done, but if it can be done, it's indirect experience teaching, which is basically getting them to talk to other people who have gone through this experience. Let's say if somebody has just gone on a holiday to a coal mine, or gone and had a visit with a coal mine, get that person to come and talk about it. So finding opportunities for them to learn through other people's experience, or reading a biography, watching demonstrations of things happening, like how do coal miners actually work, going through it, and then talking about it and say, okay, what could go wrong here, what are the safety instructions, whatever aspect of it that you're going to be looking into. If they can actually do that, that's an indirect experience teaching. And obviously we all know about direct experience teaching, where we actually take them to these kind of experiences, like wherever possible you take them to the zoo or a farm or whatever.
There's one more question here. How can we incorporate it to the lesson plan for autistic kids?
Depends on where in the spectrum the autistic child is. If he is non-verbal, then it'll probably have to be, in a way that he can write, or he can type, or he can use some kind of augmentative speech technology that he's using to join in. So it depends on their strengths. It's a very general question, actually, but it depends on their strength. And autistic children do enjoy a lot of experiential learning.
Yeah, maybe there are a few points maybe that will not work with autistic kids, but yes, I think what I feel, maybe this rhythmic melodic instruction will work.
Even
There
movement
are,
works. Movement
yes,
works a
any
lot with them.
movement work. Any movement work.
Yeah, and
One more question. Actually, it's on the similar lines for autistic kids.
yeah. So
Yeah,
like I said,
forming a peer group is one of the tough tasks. If it is done properly, it may benefit the students a lot.
true.
Yes, and there are a few more. What about
Oh,
dyslexic kids?
dyslexic kids, their biggest problem is being able to write or read. But for everything else, it works actually very, very well for them. In fact, all of this works best for children with just dyslexia, because they don't have to see. A lot of them are very good speakers. They understand a lot. They're good listeners and they're good speakers. So use that as their strength. And so even like I said in the starting, when they are representing their homework or their understanding, when you have done a concept and you want that. So if it's a child who has dyslexia, instead of making him write it out, if you can actually tell him to come and present about it orally, and then see how much he's understood. And if he's understood it, it works, right?
Yes,
It doesn't
yes.
have to write it out. So his problem will be in writing it out, and then the spelling that's connected to it, and the letter formation and all of that. So if that can be avoided, if he's listening to it and if he's representing it. So actually group work will work very well if your grouping is done right. If you have a dyslexic student with other mainstream students, the other person can be the writer of the group, and the dyslexic students can be the contributor or the speaker of the group. So they can have roles assigned to them.
There are many questions actually, Meera. Any
So
suggestion?
ADHD kids, movement, it's actually what is the biggest advantage of having an ADHD thing for an ADHD student is they benefit from regular movement. at regular intervals. So if we can do that, so when you involve kinesthetic and tactile, it kind of keeps them engaged by giving them the opportunity to actually exercise their fidget issues. So getting them involved with doing an action like in a role play where the maximum movement has to be there, put him there.
Yes. So the 12 methods you have introduced,
Yeah.
what will work for ADHD kids the most?
Movement,
Mo-
kinesthetic.
Okay. Okay. So, yeah, you can please carry on. We'll take the questions a little later.
Yeah. So again, in bringing in music, and like I mentioned this, I think right at the start, say in year two and yeah, the younger classes, early primary, we do
Mhm.
like when you are talking about life cycle of a frog or the plant life cycle or whatever, you have songs to go with it. But somewhere along the road, when you reach year four and year five, or grade four and grade five, you stop
Mhm.
doing that. But actually, I still, if I put things into rhyme, I find it easier to remember. Even phone numbers, if you have a certain toning to it, it's easy. I mean, as adults, not a lot that we remember and we kind of just put things into the thing. But if you're able to kind of form a rhythm with the phone numbers, it's easier for us to recall the numbers, even a phone number, something as simple. So putting a rhythm, putting it into music and kind of forming a tone with it will help them remember the things, even spellings, or if you're saying it in a sing-song way, sometimes it's easier to remember. Time table,
Yeah.
multiplication tables.
Yes. 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 There are one more. Okay. She says thank you. Yeah. So, would you like me to go to the next slide, Mira?
Is there anything else? Because the next slide, what I'm going to be talking about is basically something I'm very, very keen on, which is called the center-based learning, and
All
how
right.
in one lesson you can incorporate all these, all or maximum of the multisensory ways of teaching.
I think most of our viewers are from special education background. I could like I found it from their questions, the kind of questions they're posting, basically for neurodivergent kids. They're asking about autism, ADHD, and dyslexia mostly. And what I can see, it's from special education. They are special educators, I suppose. So maybe something for special education teachers.
Specifically, I don't know how many of these people who are talking about special education are working in inclusive setups. If they're working in an inclusive setup and doing push in classes instead of pull out, then it's something that they should talk with the mainstream teacher and collaborate and be involved in the lesson planning stage of it, so that the teacher, everybody is being, the senses are being taken care of. But if it's a pull out setup, even then I would say that your lesson plan or the teaching that you're going to be doing with the special ed, if you can try and actually incorporate as much of the multisensory as possible, it will help. Again, I'm going to repeat that it's not possible to include everything in every lesson plan. But if every lesson plan is at least focused on involving about 4 or 5 different senses, yes, there is a checklist. I can actually send it to you later. I mean, I can send it to, I don't know how this works, but there are
Yeah, you can
checklists.
send it to me. You can send it to me, and I will post it, or
Perfect. I
maybe
can do that.
send it to others. So, viewers, if you have any queries, or if you, as for this checklist is concerned, if you could just write to me. My email ID. Let me share my email ID with you. Yeah, I for inclusion at gmail.com. I will forward the checklist to you. Okay, Meera?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great then. And thank you very much for these effective recommendations, Meera. And my dear viewers, the benefits of multisensory learning have been verified by contemporary research in cognitive science. I was reading a paper recently, a 2018 study using fMRI technology. I think all of us know what fMRI technology is.
Yes.
It measures brain activity by detecting changes in blood flow. Yeah, this research found that children with the strongest literacy skills had more interactivity between different regions in their brains. And I'm sharing here the details of that paper where I found it for our viewers. Just a minute, please.
There are two, and specifically for children with who were talking about reading, especially if you're focusing on reading and using multisensory methods for it.
Yeah.
There is Autumn Gillingham and Linda Mood Bell programs, which are the most popular and most commonly used for
Yeah.
include multisensory methods of learning for reading, especially.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, very much so. So we have, I think, taken some questions from our viewers. There is no more questions I can see. So, thank you very much, viewers, for your enthusiastic participation. So now I'll come back to Meera again. Meera, what suggestion, what
I would like to actually take this time
recommendations?
to talk about center based or uh, so I don't know if it's one to one teaching, then it is basically catering completely. If you move on to the next slide, I mean, there's nothing much in the slide, it's just an image. Center
Mhm.
learning station. So if you can, if it's a one to one situation, if you can have different stations for a student where he moves, like when he goes, like even for autistic child, and you had this question as to how does it work. So he, if you've done it on over a period of time, he knows when he goes to this particular station, this is his activity. Or let's say if you have set up 4 stations and say the first station is quiet time, so when you go to that table, the student has to open a book or take whatever is there to read and do that. It becomes a routine for an autistic child, and that works very well for children with autism, that you have an established routine. So when you go to this center or this table or this part of the room, you need to open your book and sit down and read for 15 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever. It depends on the age and the ability of the child. You can decide the time, and then you say, okay, the next table, this is an action group, so when you go to this, you have to fit the puzzle in, or you have to draw, or you have to fill in the worksheet, or it can be. So that's your second sense being engaged. Then you go to the third room where you have to explain to me what you have done, so you're using your speaking sense, or you have to uh, I mean, like, so you can have centers where at each of these points you have to do different actions. And in a mainstream classroom, actually, they can, if it's a bigger group, you have centers again, and by groups they move. So they pick the activities, practice the materials, and make projects depending on which reinforces a new knowledge using a different method at each center. So you create learning stations in a way and then keep the students moving.
Yeah, some people are posting some irrelevant comments. That's the problem here.
Like, see, if you're let me talk about, if you're talking about phonics instruction. So when you're doing phonics instruction, you have one place where they're listening to the sound of the letters, right? So they're listening to it, and then the next thing that they're doing is, while listening to the sound, they're actually also tracing either on paper or on air, the skywriting that we do. So
Yes,
so
yes.
when you're doing skywriting, it's full body, it's kinesthetic.
Yeah, that's true. Yes, yes, very
And
much
when you're
so.
tracing it on a paper, and you're also at the same time listening, writing, and speaking, three senses are engaged.
Yeah,
So especially for phonics instruction, it's actually very good, and it's again sequential. Then they know that when they, I spoke about sequential learning. So you do this step, then you do this step, then you do this step. So they kind of learn what is the order of things, events to happen. So
yeah,
for something as simple as phonics, it can be used. And let's say multiple multiplication tables. If you ask them to move, excuse me, if you ask children to move in groups, so you're teaching them the grouping. What is multiplication? It's grouping. So 2 and 2. So you have people coming in, students coming in, or they're using marbles and moving it to, those are all multiple. You're using multiple senses. And even again, I'm going to come back to mainstream, because when I'm talking about inclusive, my focus is more on in a mainstream classroom where a child with identified or non-identified learning disabilities is in the classroom and he is learning with the rest of his class, with the rest of his peer group. So, for example, if it's a lecture where the teacher is going to be giving instruction, that doesn't have to necessarily be only auditory. It doesn't have to be the teacher only talking. So you can have a visual stimulus to go with it if you're doing a PPT or a diagram, or you can just take a chart and show it if you do not have a board. So there is a visual stimulus, then doing a skit based on it. Or if you're doing a math problem, you could actually, especially the word problems, which is something a lot of kids with reading difficulties find very difficult to understand, then make it actually alive by letting them draw diagrams with it.
Yeah.
Very simple things. It's not difficult. Like I say, it's not rocket science. It just needs a little bit more thought and planning.
Very true. So there's one more question. Can you suggest few strategies to deal with ADHD child in regular classroom, that is mainstream classroom, she
Yeah.
means?
So, which is where I'm coming to, which is exactly what I was talking about. When you're talking about an ADHD child in mainstream classroom, if you can have centers where they're going to be given the opportunity by the teacher to actually move, it kind of keeps them engaged, because that's one of the biggest things that they need to move regularly at regular intervals. So having centers and having multi-sensory movement, like you're doing a tactile thing or a kind of when they're getting up and moving or walking or doing an action, all of that keeps them engaged and very helpful with ADHD. ADHD and dyslexia students are the ones that who can be actually in an inclusive classroom with minimal support, unlike a artist, depending on the level of autism or the where in the spectrum they are. But ADHD students and dyslexic students and students with dyscalculia are the ones that can be 100% fitted into an inclusive classroom and have a push in and not a pull out.
Very true. Thank you very much, Meera, for all your recommendations. But it's and yeah, I would like to thank all our participants who have very enthusiastically participated in our discussion. And it's almost time to conclude our program now. So before we leave, any concluding comment or suggestions for our viewers, Meera?
Uh, Actually, there's a lot. If you go online, I think, and search saying multisensory lesson plans for a particular topic, very often you find resources. So it's available. You just need to search for it and then use it. I agree. Visual stimulus does become difficult for children who look away from the board or the screen. So, which is why for them, auditory will help if they are at least listening, even if they're not looking at the board. If they're listening and they're kind of doing something related to it, if they're making notes of it, both of those, at least two of their senses are involved for sure.
Yeah. Yes, very much so. So, is there any more question? No, I can't see anything. Thank you very much, Mira. Thank you for all your
Thank you.
support. And I thank you on behalf of all of us at I for Inclusion. And I'm looking forward to collaborating with you in near future.
Sure. I will send that link to you,
Yes,
the
please.
chart. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And my dear viewers, this episode will be available on Facebook for our followers to watch later as well. There are a few more comments coming. Thanks a lot for your valuable inputs. Thanks, ma'am. So it's a kind of thank you messages. There is no more question, I suppose. So, my dear viewers, I will come back on the 2nd of September with the 47th episode of Let's Talk Inclusion. So, please keep an eye on our Facebook page for the announcement. Till then, take care and goodbye. A few more thank you messages for Meera.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. One more. Anyway, thank you very much, Meera.
Thank
Thanks a
you.
lot.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you,
Bye.
viewers. Thank you, viewers. Bye bye.
Bye.